You know, there is this universally recognized human experience that we rarely actually examine it closely.
Right.
But it governs like almost every single decision we make. And it's basically this endless, agonizing waiting game for
Oh,
happiness.
yeah, the waiting room.
Exactly. We treat our lives like this massive, poorly lit waiting room. We're just sitting there, clutching our little numbered ticket, looking at a door, and constantly telling ourselves some variation of a very specific lie, which is, I will finally be happy
When a
when.
promotion arrives.
Right. I'll feel secure when the debts are cleared, or I'll finally exhale when I find the perfect partner. It's like we postpone our entire existence for some future condition.
It is a really profound psychological trap because we operate under this assumption that the timeline of fulfillment is completely linear, much like constructing a grand building. You believe you have to lay the physical foundation first, then stack the bricks through all this exhausting labor, raise the roof over the passage of eras, and only then, once the physical structure is fully completed, are you permitted to step inside and experience the emotion of safety or joy.
Wow. Yeah, that is exactly how we think about it.
We are so conditioned to view cause and effect in one strict direction. Like the physical event has to happen first, and then the emotional response just follows as a reward.
And it is deeply comforting to believe that, isn't it? I mean, we really crave predictability.
We do. We absolutely do.
Like, if I just do X, Y, and Z, the universe will eventually hand me a shiny trophy. And inside that physical trophy is going to be all the joy I've been deferring for years.
Hmm.
But the core challenge we're tackling today completely shatters that entire model.
It has to, yeah.
Because when we actually look at what happens when people finally achieve that long-awaited prize, like when the universe finally calls their number in that waiting room, the reality is incredibly jarring.
It's almost universally disappointing. I mean, think about the pursuit of a major external artifact, right? Like an immense career milestone.
Sure.
An individual might spend an enormous fraction of their life chasing it.
Mm.
They are completely convinced that the object or the title itself physically contains the emotion of joy.
Right, like the joy is baked into the title.
Exactly. Yet, when they finally cross the finish line, what actually happens? There is an initial rush, sure.
Yeah, for like a minute.
Right, but then, almost inevitably, the joy just vanishes in a solitary spark. It totally evaporates. Within days or maybe weeks, they're left staring at the prize feeling exactly as empty or anxious or unfulfilled as they did at the starting block.
I have seen that happen so many times. It is terrifying, honestly. You finally hold the thing you thought would save you, and you realize it is just, well, it's just a thing.
Just a completely neutral object.
Yeah. And because we don't understand the mechanics of why that happens, our immediate response is usually just to pick a bigger target.
Right, the treadmill.
We think, oh, I guess that wasn't the right house or the right job or the right amount of money. I just need the next one. We just jump onto a perpetually accelerating treadmill.
Which brings us to the real mission of our analysis today. We are going to dismantle that deeply ingrained illusion.
The illusion that reality just happens to us.
Exactly. The illusion that reality is something that happens passively to us, or that the physical world holds the power to dictate our internal state. Because instead, we are going to explore a completely inverted model of existence. We are going to map out the precise mechanics of how reality is actively generated by us.
Okay, I want to prepare the listener right now because this is going to require a massive paradigm shift.
It really is.
So we are not talking about like simple positive thinking or passive optimism here. We are looking at the underlying architecture of human attention. We're going to examine the profound functional divide between the physical brain and the animating mind.
Yes.
And we'll discuss the exact, rigorous methods used to rewire the external world by commanding our internal states.
Because to transition from being a fragile passenger, adrift in a random universe, to realizing you are the active architect of a highly responsive cosmos, you have to completely rethink the concept of causality.
Right.
But before we can build this new framework, we really have to look honestly at the current state of our mental tools. Because for the overwhelming majority of people, the mind resembles a chaotic, raging storm rather than a focused tool of creation.
That is the perfect place to start. Let's talk about this untamed mind, which honestly feels like the defining crisis of modern human existence.
Oh, without a doubt.
But I want to play devil's advocate for a second. We hear a lot about shrinking attention spans, but is it really that dire? Because people manage to navigate complex jobs, they raise families, they function in society.
Sure, they survive.
Right. So is our scattered attention truly the primary barrier to this kind of ultimate mastery you're talking about?
Well, functioning in a state of constant distraction is not the same as exercising true dominion over your reality. Yes, people survive, but they are operating on an erratic autopilot.
Yeah.
The untamed mind is a profound liability because modern human attention flits from thought to thought like a restless, panicked insect. We are perpetually pulled by an endless tide of instant gratification and external stimuli.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
It is. If you ask an individual to close their eyes and hold an unbroken, singular concept in their mind, most cannot do it for more than a mere fragment of a moment.
No way.
Right before a random anxiety or a memory or an urge to check a screen just intrudes and breaks the focus completely.
I have to admit, I struggle with that immensely. It feels like my brain is this high-performance engine, but the steering wheel is completely detached.
That's a great way to put it.
I can generate a lot of energy, but it gets dispersed in 100 different directions. Like, I'm worrying about a social interaction from yesterday, stressing about a deadline tomorrow, and reacting to a digital notification right now, all within the span of 3 seconds.
And that dispersion of energy is exactly why the physical world feels so chaotic and unresponsive to our actual desires. There's a fundamental law of existence, a principle as rigid as gravity that states true emotional resonance must precede physical manifestation.
Wait, must proceed.
Yes, the internal state must be established before the external environment can reflect it.
So the feeling has to come first, unconditionally.
Yes, unconditionally. Waiting for a material object to miraculously grant you an emotion is a complete inversion of how the universe actually operates.
Okay, that makes sense.
It is akin to standing in front of a cold, empty fireplace and declaring, give me blazing heat, and only then will I provide you with wood.
Oh, wow, that's a brilliant analogy.
Right. The physical world is entirely fundamentally neutral. It does not possess the capacity to generate emotion. It only has the capacity to reflect it.
Let's ground this with a specific example. Let's take a luxury vehicle, like a really rare high-performance machine.
Okay, perfect example.
Society bombards us with the message that acquiring this machine will deliver a permanent state of joy, status, and fulfillment. People will literally sacrifice a vast constellation of hours, their health, their relationships, just to acquire it.
And when they finally acquire it, what are they actually interacting with?
Right.
They are interacting with a collection of metal, leather, and glass.
Mm.
That material does not contain a single molecule of joy. The leather does not know it is expensive.
That's so true.
The engine block does not harbor the emotion of success. It is utterly neutral matter.
So if the car doesn't contain the joy, where is the rush of excitement coming from when someone finally sits in the driver's seat for the first time?
The joy is generated entirely within the self. The individual has finally given themselves psychological permission to feel successful because they have acquired the physical token they decided represented success.
Oh, I see.
But the emotion was always internal. The tragedy is that because they mistakenly attribute the feeling to the neutral object, the feeling inevitably fades as they become habituated to the object.
That makes so much sense, but it leads to a very challenging realization. If the external world is essentially just a neutral canvas waiting for us to project our internal state upon it, what exactly are we interacting with every day?
That's the real question.
Like, what is the actual architecture of this reality? We have to move past the idea that reality is a solid, unyielding structure that just exists independently of us.
To understand the mechanics of how internal states alter external circumstances, we have to adopt a profound structural framework. We must begin to view reality as a self-sustaining projection.
A projection.
Yes. It is highly useful to conceptualize it as a responsive, dual-natured hologram.
Okay, a responsive hologram. I really want to unpack that because when I hear hologram, I immediately think of a sci-fi movie, right? Like a passive illusion that isn't really there. But you are saying it is responsive. It is actively reacting to the observer.
Yeah. It is not an illusion in the sense that it isn't real. It is incredibly real to our physical senses. But its fundamental nature is malleable. In this holographic architecture, the individual is not merely an audience member watching a film.
Right.
You serve simultaneously as the underlying processor that generates the code and the physical display screen where the imagery is ultimately projected. You are the projector, the film, and the screen.
Okay, if I am the projector, I need to know how the machine actually works. And I think this is where we have to establish a very clear defining line between two concepts that people, myself included, mix up all the time.
But sure.
The brain and the mind. We use them interchangeably in casual conversation. We say, keep that in mind, or use your brain as if they are the exact same thing.
Blowing that distinction is one of the greatest barriers to understanding how to operate this machinery. We must separate them completely.
Okay, how do we separate them?
The brain is the biological calculator. It's a brilliant, hyper-complex organ, but it is ultimately a physical component of the hologram itself. It is the hardware.
Got it. The hardware.
Right. It manages the autonomic nervous system, it stores biological memory, and it processes sensory input. But it does not originate true independent creation.
So the brain is basically the world's most advanced computer processor, but a processor still needs a user to tell it what program to run.
Exactly. The mind is that user. The mind is the animating, non-physical spark. It is the invisible force that sits outside the biological constraints of the physical hologram.
Oh,
The mind is the architect. The brain is merely the drafting software that translates the architect's vision into a format the physical body and the surrounding environment can interact with.
this is a massive distinction. So if the brain is just the hardware, what is the actual mechanism that connects the non-physical mind to the physical events of tomorrow? Like, how does a thought actually turn into an opportunity or a serendipitous encounter or a tangible reality? I want to know the mechanics, not just the philosophy.
The primary mechanism, the bridge between the non-physical and the physical, is conscious attention.
Conscious attention.
Yes. Conscious attention acts as the great selector. Whatever the conscious mind deliberately and consistently dwells upon, whatever image, feeling, or assumption it holds with an unwavering grip, is eventually fed directly into the subconscious.
And what exactly is the subconscious doing in this model? Is it just a storage drive where we keep memories?
No, the subconscious is far more active.
Hmm.
In this framework, the subconscious acts as a boundless cosmic generator.
A generator.
It is entirely impartial. It does not possess the ability to analyze, debate, or reject the input it receives from the conscious mind. It does not judge whether a dominant thought is beneficial or destructive, true or false.
Oh, really?
It blindly accepts the dominant emotional signature provided by your attention and immediately begins pushing it outward.
So if I spend the overwhelming majority of my day dwelling on anxiety, constantly visualizing worst-case scenarios, my subconscious isn't trying to protect me from those scenarios.
Not at all.
It is taking those vivid visualizations as a direct command to generate that exact reality.
It mathematically organizes these seemingly random variables of the physical world to match that frequency. It orchestrates the tangibles, the events, the specific environments, the behavior of other people within your sphere of influence.
That is slightly terrifying.
It can be. It ensures that the external hologram perfectly mirrors the internal blueprint it was handed. From a cognitive perspective, you could think of this as reprogramming your biological filtering networks.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the world is filled with a vast constellation of data points and opportunities. When your mind is locked onto a specific frequency of success or abundance, your physiological hardware stops filtering out the resources that match that frequency, making them suddenly visible and accessible to you.
Let me push back on this a bit because I want to channel the skepticism of the listener here.
Please do.
This all sounds intellectually elegant, but let's look at practical reality. If I am the architect and there is genuinely no real separation between my mind and the reality I want to project, why does it feel so impossibly difficult to change my circumstances?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. If I want to experience a reality where I have achieved complete financial sovereignty and my mind is the operator of the hologram, why does it feel like there is a massive, insurmountable mountain range between where I am sitting right now and that vision?
That friction is the most common experience, and the answer lies in the deeply ingrained illusion of separateness. Because our physical bodies, our hands, our eyes, our vocal cords, are part of the projected hologram, we make the fundamental error of identifying exclusively with the avatar.
It's Avatar, yeah.
We think we are the character walking around inside the simulation, subject to all its physical laws and limitations, rather than the architect operating the console from above.
We totally get lost in the movie. We forget we are sitting in the theater.
We do. And because we identify as the physical avatar, we believe that changing reality requires immense physical force. But gaining true dominion requires a staggering realization. Controlling an event on the other side of your reality, or drawing an entirely new paradigm into your direct experience, requires the exact same fundamental internal mechanism as moving your own physical hand.
Wait, I really need to stop you there. Are you saying that shifting the trajectory of my entire career or manifesting a massive shift in my life operates on the same mechanical principle as me simply deciding to lift my coffee cup right now?
In the realm of the non-physical mind, yes. Let us break it down. When you decide to raise your hand, your mind commands the biological calculator of your brain to fire a sequence of signals. The physical hologram responds instantly.
Right.
You do not doubt your ability to lift your hand. You do not sit there and wonder if you are worthy of lifting it. You do not worry about the statistical probability of your hand actually rising. You command it with absolute, unquestioning certainty, and the physical response is instantaneous.
I just do it. The intention and the action are basically simultaneous because there's zero doubt.
Exactly.
Mm.
Now compare that to when you decide to manifest a massive shift in your external reality. You set the intention, but immediately the biological calculator kicks in with a vast constellation of doubts.
Oh yeah, a million doubts.
It analyzes your past failures, it calculates the perceived scarcity of resources, it worries about the opinions of others. Your attention wavers violently.
So true.
Your subconscious generator is receiving a garbled, contradictory signal. It's hearing, I want this reality, but I fear it is impossible, and I am anxious about not having it.
Wow.
The reason the mountain range feels vast is not because the external world is resisting you. It is because your internal attention is wildly fluctuating.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. The obstacle isn't the physical distance to the goal. The obstacle is the fragmentation of my own focus. It's like static on the signal.
Exactly. It's static. And this realization brings us to a critical juncture. Knowing that this responsive machinery exists is only a preliminary step. The intellectual understanding alone changes absolutely nothing.
Right, you have to actually apply it.
The infinitely more difficult work is training the mind to operate these controls without our attention constantly slipping. We have to figure out how to forge our scattered, chaotic attention into an unwavering laser beam of focus.
And we are right back to the crisis of the untamed mind. How do we take a mind that is used to being pacified by endless scrolling and instant gratification and forge it into a laser? Because I can tell you, just telling someone to concentrate harder does not work.
No, it doesn't. It requires entering a rigorous mental crucible. The magnitude of your physical reality is directly and proportionally dictated by the intensity of your focus.
The intensity of focus.
Right. I want to share the historical framework of an individual who mastered this to an almost terrifying degree.
Okay.
Consider a profoundly influential industrial titan from the distant past, an individual who built a monopolistic empire that fundamentally reshaped the global economic landscape.
We are talking about someone who amassed resources on a scale that is almost difficult to comprehend today.
Precisely. And what is vital to understand is that he did not build this empire through mere physical labor or by simply outworking his competitors in the traditional sense, nor was it solely raw, calculating intellect.
So what was his edge?
When his methods were deeply scrutinized by observers and historians, the defining characteristic that separated him from everyone else was his rare ability to hold his attention on a singular, isolated concept for prolonged, entirely unbroken durations.
Give me a picture of what that actually looked like in practice, because we hear focus, but we usually just mean working on a spreadsheet for an hour without checking our phones.
This was focus of a completely different magnitude. In the midst of chaotic boardroom negotiations, with fortunes hanging in the balance and advisors literally panicking around him, this individual would often close his eyes, retreat entirely into the architecture of his own mind, and hold a single thought regarding his desired outcome.
Just amidst all the chaos.
Yes, he would sit in absolute silence, completely impervious to the external pressure until the mental blueprint was locked in. He was burning a hole through the fabric of reality with the concentrated heat of his attention, while everyone else was just reacting to the noise.
He wasn't reacting to the hologram, he was commanding it.
Exactly.
So how does a listener actually forge that kind of mental weaponry today?
Yeah.
I mean, we do not naturally possess the discipline of an industrial titan. We need a training ground.
We do. We must engage in specific, highly demanding practices designed to physically and neurologically condition the mind. It is identical to the process of physical conditioning for an elite athlete. You have to create deliberate resistance.
Okay, so what's an exercise we can do?
One of the most effective methods to test and build this capacity is an exercise we can call the currency test.
Oh, I am familiar with this one, and it is brutally illuminating. I want the listener to really imagine trying this tonight. Walk us through the mechanics of the test.
The practitioner must sit in silence, remove all external stimuli, and close their eyes. In the theater of your mind, you must clearly visualize a solitary unit of currency.
Like a coin or a bill.
Yes, could be a highly detailed banknote or specific coin. See the texture, the serial numbers, the wear and tear. Then, With excruciating slowness and complete presence, you begin counting a boundless tide of these units.
Okay.
1. You visualize it fully. 2. You stack the next one deliberately.
Oh.
3. You maintain the physical sensation of the growing stack.
On the surface, that sounds like a basic relaxation technique, like counting sheep or counting coins. Where's the crucible?
The simplicity is the trap, because the exercise comes with an unyielding rule. If your mind drifts to tomorrow's anxieties, yesterday's regrets, a sudden itch on your arm, or what you're going to eat for dinner for even a solitary spark of time, you must ruthlessly, without a single compromise, start over from zero. You do not get to pause, acknowledge the distraction, let it pass, and resume from the number 40. The moment the singular focus is broken, the structural integrity of the exercise collapses. Back to zero.
I really encourage everyone listening to genuinely try this because the level of frustration you will experience is staggering.
It's intense.
I remember my first serious attempt. I thought, I'm a disciplined person. I can count to 100. I got to maybe 7 before my brain suddenly supplied a completely random memory of a conversation I had 3 years ago. The visualization just shattered.
And having to go back to zero.
Right. Having to go back to 1 over and over forces a deeply uncomfortable confrontation. You realize with terrifying clarity that you are not the master of your own house. Your attention is entirely at the mercy of random chaotic impulses.
It is a deeply humbling realization. The biological calculator is constantly generating noise, and you are accustomed to following every single sound it makes.
Yeah.
But that intense frustration you feel when you reset to zero, that is the exact psychological friction required for growth. That is the feeling of the neural pathways resisting change. Every time you force the mind back to the singular object, you are strengthening the directing mind over the reactive brain.
You're building the muscle of dominion.
Precisely.
Are there other ways to train this besides the currency test?
There is another profoundly potent practice. It involves dynamic yet contained visualization. Picture a vast ancient tree in the midst of autumn.
Okay, I have it.
In your mind's eye, you watch a single solitary leaf detach from a branch. Your task is to track its slow, erratic, fluttering descent to the ground with absolute unbroken presence.
Just tracking that one leaf?
Yes. You watch the way it catches the wind, the way it spins. When it finally lands upon the earth, you immediately lock your attention onto the next falling leaf.
That sounds almost like a moving meditation.
It is the spiritual equivalent of supreme martial arts conditioning for the attention span. The currency test builds the capacity to hold a static image, while the falling leaves practice trains the mind to maintain singular focus on a dynamic, changing process without losing presence. It strips away the chaotic noise and forces the mind to inhabit the exact present moment.
This conversation brings up a really fascinating connection. We are talking about these deliberate, isolated, almost painful practices to forge focus.
Right.
If you look at history and you look at the biographies of individuals who have triggered the most powerful, permanent spiritual or psychological awakenings, there is a recurring theme.
There it is.
Is this need for extreme focus the underlying reason why periods of profound confinement, whether that is literal incarceration, severe geographic isolation, or just hitting an absolute devastating rock bottom in life, why do those moments so often serve as the catalyst for transformation?
That is a brilliant synthesis, and the connection is undeniable. Look at the architecture of a severe crisis or a period of profound confinement. What is the fundamental mechanism at play?
You lose everything.
The endless, pacifying tide of external distractions is violently and forcibly stripped away. The constant influx of social noise, the illusion of busyness, the comforting routines, they all just vanish.
You are suddenly stranded in a void. The physical hologram essentially stops providing new inputs.
And in that echoing isolation, the individual is forced into an unrelenting, unavoidable confrontation with their own internal dialogue. There is nowhere left to run.
Right.
In normal life, when an uncomfortable thought arises, you can reach for a distraction. In profound confinement, that escape hatch is welded shut. You either allow the chaotic storm of the untamed mind to completely destroy you from the inside out, descending into madness or despair, or you are forced, out of sheer biological and spiritual survival, to master your attention.
So a period of absolute devastation isn't just a punishment. It actually acts as the ultimate hyper-accelerated training ground.
It does.
It forces you to enter the crucible because the external world has ceased to provide any comfort. You have to actively build an internal sanctuary or you perish.
The crisis acts as the forge. The intense heat of losing everything burns away the superficial dependencies, leaving only the pure, concentrated essence of your will. That is why those who survive the depths of isolation often emerge with a level of clarity and manifesting power that seems almost supernatural to the ordinary observer. They have mastered the console.
Okay, let's build on this progression. Let's say the listener has entered the forge. They have done the grueling work. They have struggled through the currency test. They have mastered tracking the falling leaves. Or perhaps they have survived their own personal rock bottom and emerged with their attention intact.
Their mind is a laser now.
Exactly. Their mind is no longer a scattered reactive storm. It is a highly calibrated, unwavering laser. The critical question now shifts from how to focus to what we focus on. Exactly what do we point that laser toward in order to effectively command the responsive hologram?
This is where we transition from the conditioning of the tool to the active mechanics of creation. Once the laser is forged, it must be directed with absolute, uncompromising precision toward the concept of the wish fulfilled.
The wish fulfilled. That phrase gets tossed around a lot in self-help circles, but I want to really dissect it because it usually gets misinterpreted as just intensely hoping for a better future. It goes far beyond hoping, doesn't it?
It is the complete antithesis of hoping.
Wow, really?
Hoping is fundamentally an acknowledgement of absence. When you hope for something, you are broadcasting a very specific frequency to the subconscious generator. You are saying, I do not currently have this thing, I am separate from it, and I wish it would traverse the vast distance to come to me.
Oh, that makes sense.
The subconscious generator takes that input, the feeling of absence and separation, and faithfully replicates a reality where the object remains perpetually out of reach, keeping you in a state of continuous hoping.
So hoping is basically commanding the universe to keep you waiting.
Precisely. The mechanics of reality generation demand that to materialize a desire, one must completely cellularly embody the emotional intensity of its completion in the absolute present moment.
The feeling is the ultimate secret here. Seeing a static mental picture is insufficient. I mean, I could visualize a pile of money or a happy relationship all day, but if I feel anxious while visualizing it, I am just broadcasting anxiety.
A mental picture without the corresponding emotional resonance is just a dead, inert blueprint. It has no animating spark. To engage the subconscious generator and actually shift the holographic projection, you must provide the precise emotional signature of the reality you wish to inhabit. The emotion is the fuel that powers the manifestation.
So what is the practical framework for actually achieving this? How do we point the laser and generate that specific fuel? Because it sounds really difficult to feel something you don't physically have yet.
It requires a highly disciplined two-step framework. The first step is to declare, with boundless, uncompromising audacity, what it is you wish to experience. And the vital, non-negotiable rule here is do not limit the magnitude of the desire based on the perceived constraints of your current circumstances.
And this is where the biological calculator tries to sabotage us, right? It looks at the bank account and says, well, asking for a vast constellation of resources is illogical. Let's just ask for enough to pay the electricity bill.
Exactly. The logic of your current reality is the exact mechanism that keeps you trapped within it. If you use your present limitations to dictate your future desires, you are simply commanding the subconscious to project those exact same limitations into tomorrow.
You just recreate yesterday.
Right. You must bypass the analytical brain that is constantly measuring constraints.
Yeah.
You must state the audacious desire. Once that declaration is made, the second step is where true mastery is tested. You must define and completely inhabit the exact emotional frequency of possessing that desire right now.
Not a week from now when it theoretically arrives.
Yeah.
Right this very second, sitting in your chair, regardless of what the room around you looks like.
Yes. Complete sensory immersion is required. If your audacious desire is a massive achievement in your professional field, you cannot simply look at a vague mental image of a trophy or a title. You must close your eyes and construct the reality.
Build it out completely.
Yes, you must hear the distinct, specific voices of your colleagues offering their congratulations. You must physically feel the heavy, cold texture of the award in your hands, or the firm handshake of a partner. You must experience the thrilling, heart-pounding intensity, the relief, the profound satisfaction of that reality as a present, undeniable, accomplished fact.
This brings to mind a staggering historical account of a practitioner who truly mastered this specific sensory immersion under the most extreme conditions imaginable.
Oh yes, this is a vital example.
This was an individual who found themselves entirely stripped of freedom, placed in a state of absolute profound penal confinement for decades. We are talking about severe isolation. Their name was completely replaced by a number. They were confined to a brutal, stark environment designed to completely crush the human spirit. The ultimate void.
It is the ultimate manifestation of the crucible we discussed earlier.
Completely. And instead of succumbing to the overwhelming despair and sensory deprivation of that environment, this individual utilized the confinement to forge their attention. They managed to acquire an ancient manual detailing these exact principles of the wish fulfilled.
And they applied it.
They began to ruthlessly practice the two-step framework. They wrote down their most audacious desires on scraps of paper, desires that were completely absurdly impossible, given that they were locked inside a concrete box with literally no prospect of release.
They bypassed the biological calculator's assessment of their present environment.
They bypassed it entirely. And then, sitting on a cold floor in a stark, unyielding environment, they closed their eyes and felt the reality of those desires with a staggering, overwhelming intensity.
That requires immense focus.
They didn't just hope to be free. They felt the specific texture of the clothes they would wear when free. They felt the specific joy of acquiring highly specific items, walking through specific environments, and engaging in successful commerce. They immersed their senses in a reality that directly contradicted the physical walls surrounding them.
They maintained the internal frequency so powerfully that the external environment ceased to dictate their state of being.
And the result of this practice is what makes this the ultimate case study. After the passage of eras, when the highly improbable sequence of events occurred that led to their eventual return to society, an endlessly flowing tide of manifestations began to violently arrive in their physical world.
Yes, the manifestations catch up.
The exact scenarios they had written down and felt in the dark of that cell began to mathematically organize themselves into reality.
Because the subconscious generator had been persistently fed the absolute truth of those experiences for years. The emotional signature had been firmly locked in. Once the individual stepped into an environment where movement was possible, the hologram had no choice but to rapidly adjust to the deeply ingrained blueprint.
And there is one detail from this account that is truly mind-bending to me.
Vehicle.
Yes, the vehicle. One of the specific items written down during confinement was an incredibly rare, highly coveted luxury vehicle, an artifact that is almost impossible to acquire even for the extremely wealthy under normal circumstances. But because the practitioner had embedded the feeling of owning the specific machine so deeply into their subconscious, feeling the steering wheel, smelling the interior, feeling the acceleration, the physical world began relentlessly presenting this vehicle to them.
The physical world had to match the frequency.
The circumstances just arranged themselves. Even when they reached a point where their values had shifted and they no longer actively sought it, even when they practically tried to push the opportunity away, the vehicle persistently, almost aggressively presented itself in their life until it was finally accepted. The reality they had generated would not take no for an answer.
That is a flawless illustration of the law of irreversibility in action. When the internal state reaches a critical mass of certainty and persistence, the external manifestation becomes inevitable. It transitions from a pursuit to an unavoidable collision. The physical world is forced to yield.
I find it incredibly helpful to view this process through the analogy of a biological radio dial.
How so?
When you are engaging in this sensory immersion, sitting in your chair and feeling the wish fulfilled, you need to realize you are not actually creating the music from scratch. You don't have to build the reality molecule by molecule. The song, the reality where you're wildly successful, experiencing profound joy, and living in abundance already exists in the infinite ether of possibilities. The broadcast is already happening.
That's a beautiful way to see it.
You are simply taking the dial of your own internal frequency and carefully, deliberately tuning it to match that exact station.
The signal-to-noise ratio is what you are actually managing.
Exactly. When you doubt, or when your attention wavers, you're introducing static. You are drifting between stations. But when you lock in the sensory immersion, you match the frequency perfectly. And once those frequencies align, the song has absolutely no choice but to be broadcast loudly and clearly through the physical speakers of your life.
Yes.
You are not forcing the universe to construct something out of nothing. You are selecting a pre-existing paradigm by matching its exact emotional signature.
It shifts the burden of creation completely off of your physical shoulders. You do not have to know the intricate physical steps required to acquire the rare vehicle or the vast resources. You only have to know the exact feeling of possessing them. The subconscious generator handles the logistics of the broadcast.
But tuning that dial requires immense precision, especially when the current reality we are living in is loud, chaotic, and demanding our attention constantly. It is hard to feel wealthy when you are staring at a stack of unpaid bills.
It is very difficult, yes.
Is there a specific frequency, a particular emotional state that acts as an accelerant? A state that cuts through the static of current circumstances faster and more effectively than anything else?
There is a paramount frequency. It is the most vital, yet perhaps the most profoundly misunderstood emotional state in the entire human repertoire. It is the ultimate engine of creation, gratitude.
Gratitude. I have to be honest, I feel like that word has been severely diluted by pop
Ah,
psychology.
completely diluted.
We are taught from childhood that gratitude is just saying a polite thank you when someone hands us a gift, or being appreciative that things aren't worse. It is treated purely as a reactive emotion to a positive external event.
And defining it merely as a reaction completely neutralizes its profound manifesting power. Viewing gratitude as something you only experience after a favorable event is a fundamental misunderstanding of cosmic mechanics.
Oh, what is it really?
In truth, when utilized correctly, gratitude is the most potent, proactive force in existence. It is not a passive response to reality. It is the aggressive initiator of reality.
I really need you to break that down. How do we use gratitude proactively? What does that actually look like when you are standing in the middle of a deeply difficult life situation?
It requires a radical, almost illogical shift in perspective. The true, masterful application of this engine involves generating a profound, overwhelming sense of thankfulness while simultaneously possessing absolutely nothing in the physical realm to justify it. You must generate the gratitude for the void itself.
Being grateful for the lack of things? That sounds like cognitive dissonance. My brain is screaming, why would I be grateful for this massive pile of bills?
It is deliberate cognitive dissonance, designed to trigger the law of reversibility. Let us return to the archetype of the individual in profound confinement.
Okay.
Imagine this individual is forced to perform menial, exhausting, completely uncompensated labor in the absolute depths of isolation and degradation. To any external observer, this is a state of utter horror and deprivation.
A nightmare.
But if, in that exact grueling moment, the individual can forcibly quiet the biological calculator, if they can dig deep and find a point of absolute wholeness, they completely shift the paradigm.
They change the broadcast.
They generate a staggering, terror-inducing gratitude simply for the sheer privilege of experiencing consciousness. They feel profound thanks for the rhythmic beating of their own heart, for the oxygen entering their lungs, for the profound, untouchable silence of their own inner sanctuary. By doing this, they generate an energetic power that is immeasurably strong.
Because the signal they are broadcasting is the exact emotional frequency of having everything. They are radiating the feeling of total fulfillment even while physically possessing nothing.
And this is what triggers the law of reversibility in its most aggressive and undeniable form.
The law of reversibility.
Yes, the law dictates that if a physical fact can naturally create a psychological state, then deliberately and intensely assuming that psychological state must inevitably produce the physical fact. The connection runs in both directions.
Okay, let me make sure I am fully grasping the magnitude of this mechanism. If winning a massive sum of resources naturally makes a person feel overwhelmingly grateful, secure, and at peace, well then artificially but genuinely generating that exact same overwhelming gratitude and security while you are entirely devoid of resources will physically force the universe to organize a massive sum of resources around you.
It forces the responsive hologram to reconfigure itself to match the dominant emotional input. The universe is a system of equilibrium. It cannot sustain a massive paradox for long. If your internal state is locked into one of absolute abundance, security, and immense gratitude, but your physical environment consists of poverty and restriction, the tension becomes unsustainable. The physical world, being malleable, must structurally organize itself to match the energetic blueprint you are persistently broadcasting. It will open pathways, shift circumstances, and deliver events to resolve the dissonance.
So the act of being grateful for the obstacles, for the exhausting labor, and for the severe constraints actually turns those constraints into raw fuel. Blessing the rock bottom forces reality to yield a life that is logically worthy of that immense proactive gratitude.
Yes, when you bless the rock bottom, you instantly transform it into a launch pad. You strip the negative circumstance of its power to define your state, and instead you use it as the friction needed to spark the engine of creation.
You know, hearing the mechanics of all this laid out so clearly, tracing the path from the scattered mind to the focused laser to the wish fulfilled and finally to the engine of gratitude, a massive realization is hitting me right now.
What is it?
And I think this is the core truth we all kind of avoid. We spend our entire lives obsessing over the external artifacts. We obsess over acquiring the rare vehicle, reaching the monumental career milestone, securing the perfect house. We are completely convinced those physical things are the ultimate prize of existence.
Right.
But the profound truth is, the pursuit itself, the rigorous mental conditioning, the painful forging of the attention, the cultivation of proactive gratitude while sitting in the dark, the evolution of one's own character is the actual prize.
The expansion and transformation of the self is the only true, enduring creation in this entire holographic architecture. Everything else is totally temporary.
The physical manifestations, the massive wealth, the luxury vehicles, the external accolades and success, they are literally just side effects. They are just the inevitable exhaust fumes generated by the magnificent, powerful person you had to become in order to align with those frequencies. The physical things do not actually matter. The elevated state of being you achieved is the only thing of lasting value.
That is the ultimate revelation of this entire framework. When you reach the absolute bottom of human experience, when you are stripped of all external comforts, and you somehow, through sheer will and focus, discover complete, unassailable joy and gratitude sitting right there in the dust, you effectively and permanently strip the physical world of all its power over you.
Because the world can no longer hold your happiness hostage. It can't threaten you with loss because you know how to generate wholeness straight from the void.
The external world can no longer dictate your internal state. You have successfully decoupled your joy from your physical circumstances, and when you achieve that level of mastery, when you can be blissfully happy and profoundly grateful with absolutely nothing, you become a truly non-negotiable entity in the universe. The hologram bends to your will, precisely because you refuse to let it dictate your state.
What an incredible paradigm-shifting journey this has been today. We have completely traversed the landscape of human potential, dismantling the old models and really revealing the hidden machinery of existence.
It's been wonderful.
To bring this all full circle, I want to address you, the listener, directly. We began this exploration by looking at the trap of the waiting room, that pervasive illusion that we are just fragile, helpless passengers adrift in a cold, chaotic, and random universe, just sitting on a plastic chair hoping that happiness eventually calls our number.
It is the most deeply disempowering way to navigate the gift of existence. And it is entirely unnecessary once you understand the architecture.
Completely unnecessary because we have seen the blueprints now. We know how the machinery works. We are not passengers. We are the active, deliberate architects of a highly responsive, interconnected cosmos. The ultimate mastery we must strive for is never about using physical force or exhausting labor to bend the external world to our will.
No matter.
The true work is internal. It is about doing the quiet, grueling, magnificent work of achieving absolute dominion over the singular spark of our own attention.
Because the fundamental law remains where that spark of attention is consistently and intensely directed, the blazing fires of physical reality will inevitably and unfailingly follow.
So, as we conclude this profound analysis of reality generation, we want to leave you with a final, lingering thought. Something to deeply ponder long after the audio stops, as you step away and go about the rest of your day, interacting with the vast constellation of variables in your own personal hologram.
If every single emotion you consciously allow yourself to feel today is actively, undeniably drafting the rigid architectural blueprints for your physical tomorrow, what kind of universe are you building for yourself right this very second?